This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Hey, what's up, and welcome to Hot Takes, the show where I react to the hot takes you leave under the comment section all week. First set of comments going to come from the Browns giving Greg Newsome a 5th-year option and signing a veteran center. Small says, Newsome is just our fan base's designated hate target of the year. Last year it was JOK. Someone needs to be talked about in a fan base where the Factory of Sadness is a relatively big news outlet. Someone is just going to get that attention. Not much was actually bad about last year's Browns, so people had to grasp at straws. So this is an interesting one, right? I want to start out with, I've never heard of the Factory of Sadness as a news outlet. I am not aware of them. They do not really pop up on the online circles that I am in when it comes to the Browns. I have no knowledge of them. And I know whenever I say that, there's always people who are willing or really want to help me out and give me information on them. From the sound of the name of the website, I'm good. You ain't got to fill me in. I don't want to know nothing about them. I'm fine not knowing they exist. But yeah, I don't really have much commentary to add to this part of the comment, simply because I'm not familiar with them, and nor do I care to get familiar about them. So if I don't care to get familiar about them, then I'm not even going to attempt to criticize them, because again, looks like stuff aimed towards the type of fan and the type of people that it's shit that I wouldn't like or care about. So why would I even want to know more? So please don't feel the need to fill me in. But as far as the criticism on Newsome, every year fan bases, and I think this isn't just Browns fans, this is fan bases in general, decide to pick a player to blame, and whoever they pick is not really a scientific choice, right? Greg Newsome is getting this treatment because people blame him for losing that playoff game. I think there are plenty of things you can blame that playoff loss on, not just one person. And I think blaming it all on Greg Newsome is highly irrational. But that's whoever the fan base decided that they don't like, right? And usually when you ask these people to explain more of why they don't like Greg Newsome, they're not digging into, his third down tape. They're not digging into his technique, if he's a good press corner. They're not digging into any of that, because their criticism about Greg Newsome is largely not, or their criticism about these kind of players, not just Greg Newsome, but the players that they put on this like hate pedestal, usually has nothing to do with like football, or at least less to do about football and more to do about something that they do that they don't like about that person, right? The thing with Greg Newsome is that he celebrates a lot, which I don't get why that would be something that bugs people on the team that is like required to celebrate. But yeah, I think every year we pick an irrational person to be mad at because they do something that you don't like. One year was JOK, this year is Greg Newsome, and it doesn't really have much to do about football, to be honest with you. And I think Greg's going to be just fine. He's a good corner. He's a good cover guy. He's a good press man guy. And anybody acting like having him as your third corner is some kind of disaster, while also simultaneously telling me that he can get a 2nd-round pick in a draft for him, just like demonstrates that maybe they're speaking more emotionally than factually. That's all I'll say there. Next question comes from, not question, my bad, comment is from Freddie B, who says, I remember that playoff game differently. I guess we were down 24-14. Defense held on their first drive after halftime. We had the ball at their 30 to make it a 1-score game. 2 offensive snaps later, it was 38-14, game over. I get, here is where people get mad at me on this, and where I think I am 100% justified. I'm just willing to take whatever anger people have because I think I'm right. I understand if people's standpoint with the whole like you're not going to be that critical of Joe Flacco thing, right? That people seem to be taking, right? Because it seems like you cannot bring up the fact that he did throw those 2 pick sixes in the playoffs because, Joe Flacco wasn't even supposed to be there. He was a third emergency quarterback. And my issue with that response is y'all don't be talking about Joe Flacco like he was some kind of third emergency quarterback and we was just lucky to have it. Y'all talked about him as somebody you wanted to start over Deshaun Watson. And that's the thing. If we're talking about Joe Flacco as a backup quarterback or as an emergency quarterback, I have nothing but good things to say about him in that context. But it's when people try to force him out of that context and try to tell me I must talk about Joe Flacco as somebody who could take the starting job or played better football than a starting quarterback or the starting quarterback. That's where I'm like, well, now I have to look at this different. I have to judge it as if I'm looking at a starting quarterback. And if I'm looking at a starting quarterback, 2 pick sixes in a playoff game, I mean, like, what starting quarterback in the NFL is not going to get criticized about that? Hell, Desmond Ridder stinks, but he starts, and that's something he would get criticized for, right? There's no quarterback that starts in the NFL that is a starter that would not be heavily criticized for 2 pick sixes in a playoff game, let alone what I think he had 3 pick sixes since he started 5 games, and really like 4 because one of them got returned to the 1 yard line. So yeah, it says when people gloss over that stuff while also wanting to elevate where Joe Flacco is in that conversation, that's where I have an issue. If you just think that Joe Flacco was a great story and a best case scenario for the Browns at backup quarterback this year, I would agree with you and I would sing the praises of Joe Flacco, or not agree with you, but agree with whoever is saying that, and sing the praises of Joe Flacco. My issue with Joe Flacco is when people take him outside of that box and try to force a conversation that I don't think is very much a valid conversation, because it's like, hey, you want me to talk about him in the context of him not being a starter, so I shouldn't care about these interceptions, but also force him into the context of being a starter where I do have to care about those interceptions. So I just think how people view it is very much what matters. What he did matters only to the context that I care about it mattering, right? And that's my whole issue with the dialogue about Joe Flacco and how he slides for that 2 pick six game, from people who also want to pump him up and say that the Browns should have gave him a chance to start, which, to be fair, I haven't seen anybody serious put that take out. Like, it's all been unserious people across the board who have said shit like that. But nonetheless, it's out there. It should be addressed. Thank you for the comment, Freddie. JL McFarland says, I would like to see how Cam Mitchell develops. In my opinion, the Newsome extension hinges on his own level of play and Mitchell's development. I can see a world where Newsome has a great year. They extend Newsome and Emerson and keep Mitchell around as the 4th DB. I could also see a situation where they extend Emerson and move on from Newsome because Cam develops into a top tier defensive back, especially if we're considering Deshaun Watson's contract in the mix. I don't know how much Deshaun Watson's contract really matters at the point that their extensions are going to be coming up. So that would be, well, Greg Newsome's extension is next year. And I do think Deshaun Watson's contract is going to factor in a little bit there. But I also think just Greg Newsome's role on this team and the price he can command in free agency is going to matter more than like what the Browns could offer him, right? Because I don't think the Browns would be willing to pay more than like $12 million to keep Greg Newsome, whether they had the space or not. And I think if he has a decent year this year, the market's going to push him well past $12 million. So that's not somebody you're losing because of a contract. That's just somebody you're losing because you have a budget, and you want to stay within that budget. And so I don't really see like Greg Newsome is somebody you lose because of that. Martin Emerson, who is somebody who like is playing like somebody you want to pay $20 million to. If the Browns cannot keep Martin Emerson, that would probably be due to Deshaun Watson's contract, because he's somebody you would want to pay top dollar for, right? And I don't anticipate that happening, right? Emerson's contract is going to be up in 2 years. Yeah, I just don't really see the contract affecting their ability to bring back Emerson. And I don't think the contract is the reason they wouldn't. Well, I don't think cap space is the reason that they wouldn't bring back Greg Newsome if they choose not to. I just think it's like, hey, they value that position at X amount of dollars. Similar thing going on with JOK, right? They value a linebacker at X amount of dollars, and if the price is too high for that amount of for that position, then they're just not going to do it regardless of if they have the space, because they don't want to saddle the team with bad contracts, in their opinion, right? So I think that's more of a budgeting thing than anything. But thank you for the comment. Next video is Browns with the most upside. First comment on this video I'm going to be reacting to is from Amber Stone, who says, Q, I feel like Judy is going to be Watson's D-Hop in Houston. I was a Houston fan back then. Their chemistry is so natural. You can see where one man began and the other ended. I watched Judy's tape in his recent workout film, and he's giving me a tingle in my gut. And if that's the feeling Watson gets, he starts working with Judy. Watch out, league. I do think there's potential for Jerry Jeudy to have great chemistry with Deshaun Watson. I think the Browns feel like Amari Cooper is the prototype that they want to bring when it comes to skill sets that Deshaun Watson will thrive with. And if you look at what Amari and Deshaun have done together, I'm going to do a whole video on this later this week, then, you know, the evidence is somewhat compelling there. You know, Jeudy is somebody who did have bad quarterback play last year. I think quarterback play that was uniquely awful for his specific skill set. Russell likes to throw a lot of rainbows, right? And while I think Russ throwing those rainbows up will be fine with a guy like George Pickens, who's a 50-50 ball, go get him, track him, high point the ball kind of guy, I think that those balls are pretty bad for a guy like Jeudy, who isn't a high point guy. Like Jeudy wants more of a liner, and Deshaun throws a liner. So I think that they're going to be a better fit for each other than whatever Jeudy had at his last day. And I think the Browns offense, you know, we got to see what Ken Dorsey's impact's going to be on it. But I think Jerry Jeudy and Deshaun Watson do have the potential to be a pretty interesting tandem. I don't think it gets to D-Hop levels. I would be surprised if that happened, because I just don't think Jerry Jeudy is the 50-50 ball gangster that D-Hop always was when he was in Houston, and honestly still in the league to this day. Scott Zappa says JOK may be the most obvious choice, but Mahmoud Diabate may turn into another beast at linebacker. I believe he's a necessarily killer. And he's got the skills. Aiden Robbins might be a sleeper at running back. Wow. You think the BYU kid's going to step onto the team and be a upside play? That'd be interesting. Jamari Thrash, who I think was grossly underestimated. Also, Alex Wright. Now, Alex Wright is the one I do want to talk about, because I do think there's a lot of upside with Alex Wright, right? Real athletic guy. Seems to figure out his power forward kind of position in the NFL. And really did make taking Miles off the field to keep him well rested throughout the season something that the Browns could get away with on a consistent basis. And I'm interested to see if he can take a further step and like give you starting quality edge play when you have to take a Za'Darius off the field for rest or Miles off the field for rest. And if we can maintain that level of play, not have the Miles dip happen, the world is yours if you're the Browns defense, if that's a possibility. Let's talk about, and it's going to be the last video we're going to review the comments from. Pro Football Focus is the football's Pro Football Focus problem. First comment is from the Beanolin, who says 99% of people with strong football opinions do not have a better opinion than a PFF analyst. Most people are not Quincy or Jake Burns, know how to analyze films. It's fine to refer to PFF grade in casual conversation. The problem is when analysts and content creators who want to make a living off of this are lazy. I disagree with this take. I know this was like the most liked comment there on the video, but I really do disagree with this take, because my issue with Pro Football Focus grades is more about the secrecy of that grade. Because when you say 99% of people with strong football opinions do not have a better opinion than a Pro Football Focus analyst, like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know what that person did to break down the game? Like, when I watch Jake Burns break down the game, I'm watching Jake Burns break down the game. Like, I know what he's looking at. I know what he's irritated with in that game. When you read a PFF grade, you're really taking the word of somebody you do not know because they do not tell you who graded these teams. You do not know what headspace they were and like what were their other responsibilities while grading this game, because there are times where I see a PFF grade and it's like they didn't watch. So I don't think you should have that level of trust in a PFF grade. Like they have been known to be way too shaky to just trust because they're there. Like, it's not an institution that has earned that level of trust. And I think that's my big issue that I brought up, is that we're giving this amount of trust to an institution that has not earned it at all. And I think you could point to a number of grades. There were multiple times where TJ Watt was left off the all-pro team for Pro Football Focus grades, when I think that's ridiculous. Like, he's not better than Miles, but he's not fourth team all pro. Like, it's nuts, right? He's clearly like, he's one or two of Miles almost every year. So I just think that there's a lot of examples you could point to of Pro Football Focus grades feeling a bit compromised. And also, when somebody does give you a strong opinion about a football team, if they are at least telling me who they are, I trust that more than an anonymous Pro Football Focus grade, because I at least know who that opinion is coming from. I can review what I believe to be that person's biases. I can evaluate why this person is giving me this take. But when it's just an anonymous Pro Football Focus grade, you get none of that context. So you have no idea what biases might have affected that grade positively or negatively. It's a horrible metric to just judge players on, and just take that word 100%. Even if you're not somebody who does football for a living, if you're just somebody who wants to talk about it, like, I feel like if you want to talk about something, you want to be somewhat right, and just relying on Pro Football Focus to basically watch the game and create your opinion for you. What fun is that? Let's forget about the accuracy, which I think is dubious of PFF grades. What fun is that? To concede your opinion about a player to an institution you know nothing about, when you can watch the games. Like, you watch the games, you have something to refer to. Nah. I don't buy this argument at all. I actually don't like it at all. But thank you for the comment. I disagree with it. Chamrod says in the same video, when I worked at ESPN, I developed some metrics using QBR, home run tracker. The math is great, uses higher level mathematics, calculus and above. The issue is, however, the math makes the assumption that the variables stay constant. I mean, remember when QBR was used as how PFF grade is today? As Q mentioned, the variables change game to game, hell, sometimes even mid-game. And what gets to me is the smugness of these dudes who use it because they believe they cracked the code and their logic is undeniable. At the end of the day, measurables are great, but the tape doesn't lie. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, people have come for this one from the approach of, hey, Pro Football Focus is an informed opinion, so that opinion is more valid than anybody who watched the game. And I think that's bullshit. Like, if you watch the game, you probably have as valid of an opinion as whoever graded that Pro Football Focus game, or at least in terms of conversation, right? Like, even if somebody has a ton of experience, the reason I care about a Baldy breakdown isn't because it's what Baldy is saying. It's because Baldy shows you why he is saying what he is saying. That is the value of an expert opinion. It's not just that they tell you something is good or not. Like, that's not the value of an expert's opinion. The value of an expert's opinion, and look, I'm not an expert. I'm talking about guys who played in the league, guys who've coached in the league. The value in their opinion isn't just that they have one. Players can have bad opinions all the time. If you turn on ESPN, you see a bunch of former players who don't know what they're talking about. It's not that you can have an opinion and be an expert. It's that you can explain your opinion. And the problem with the PFF grade is that there is no explanation, right? And I think that is the issue with it. There's no explanation. There's no justification. There's no write-up, right? There's no 2-paragraph explanation of why you did this. It's just a grade. And that's why I will take the opinion of somebody I know who watched the game about a player, even if they're not an expert, even if they're not Jake Burns, even if they're not Corey Kenner or one of these guys who really break down film for a living, even if they're not one of those guys. I will take their opinion more seriously because I know they watched the game and I know who they are and I know why they're saying what they're saying. I can argue if it's wrong or not, but I'll take that opinion more seriously than a PFF grade. And again, the PFF grades aren't worthless. I don't want to give that impression, but to use them as a point of evidence in an argument is worthless, in my opinion, because you're like telling me you don't have enough trust in your watch of the game to actually have an opinion. You're just relying on what you think somebody else did, which, I mean, there's no value in an opinion like that. Again, people don't have to be experts. People don't have to be 10-year NFL vets for their opinion about football to matter. Really, all you have to have an opinion that matters is watch the game. If you watch the game, I care about what your opinion is of it and at least talking to you of it. And if you can explain your opinion and you watch the game, okay, you got something valid. We can debate if you got to the right conclusion, but like if there's no explanation, I could care less about what the opinion is. You feel me? Gaggin says, Jake Burns does this really well with his weekly game breakdowns during the sessions. He best uses it as a territory source in his analysis in the game, but you still only have an opinion and round out his own. Yeah, I think he uses it, and I think a lot of people use PFF grades, and I think this is the appropriate way to use PFF grades if you are somebody who like breaks down film or makes like real content about the Browns. Like if you actually like try to be an analysis on some level. You can look at the PFF grades. You can see who they said stood out and who they said stunk, right? And that gives you a list of players that you want to keep an eye on. Then you watch the tape and you formulate your own opinions for your own reasons, right? You keep an eye on the guys that PFF's like, hey, this guy stunk. Did he stink? Let me see. But you don't just take their word verbatim. And even PFF thinks you shouldn't take that grade verbatim because they move off that all the time whenever they get a grade that's controversial. So remember, the PFF grades, they're not meant to be points of evidence in an argument. They are meant to market Pro Football Focus. Like that is the number one purpose of a Pro Football Focus grade, is to be this stat that they can really market their services off of. But that's it. That's why they give you the PFF grade for free, by the way, right? Like they'll give you the PFF grade for free. If you go on pff.com right now and you log on to the website, or you don't even have a login for the website, you go to PFF right now, you can see PFF grades. They'll give you the PFF grades because it's just for advertising. What they won't give you is the stuff that actually matters, right? The charting data, the big time throws, the pressure to sack numbers. Like that's the stuff that the people who write for Pro Football Focus actually use, actually care about. The Pro Football Focus grades, that's just for advertising purposes. So if you view it like that, you get why I feel like using these things as a definitive point in the argument is silly, because it's not a serious thing that even they think is serious, because if they thought those grades were like really coveted, they wouldn't give that shit out for free. It's free because it's there to advertise Pro Football Focus. But I've harped on that point enough. Seymour says, I'm a writer and I see nearly 100% of the time with reviews, people who spend their lives watching something will never understand the thing beyond a superficial level. You can make a system to describe it, that superficial level, but it's still superficial. Like an architect describing a building, he made the foundational work, institutional knowledge, components, technique, versus a reviewer who describes how nice the building is, amenities, locations, facade, general aesthetic. I'm not a football player, but I can recognize when somebody is an expert describing something. PFF are not that. They are professional watchers who do a little bit more than describe watching. If you really want to know how good a player is, you need to go to experts, players. I disagree with this. I actually disagree with this as well, because again, the issue with Pro Football Focus grades aren't the quality of people doing the grades. I'm pretty sure They have quality control coaches from the college level and the professional level doing these pro football focused grades, because those are people who need the extra money, and they're probably picking up some extra cash to grade some stuff for Pro Football Focus or to pass on some team notes to Pro Football Focus. I don't think that is the issue. In order to give a valid opinion about football, you do not need to be a 15-year NFL vet. Being a 15-year NFL vet does not automatically make your opinion more valid. It's about the explanation of your take that matters, right? If Kirk Herbstreit, Booger McFarland, and Michael Wilbon are all having different takes, I'm not going to agree with Booger McFarland simply because he played in the league for a little while. I'm going to agree with the take that seems to have the most sound explanation behind it. Because Michael Wilbon knew that Myles Garrett would be worth the number 1 overall pick, but Booger McFarland, who played defensive end in the NFL, thought that Myles Garrett would be a bust. You see what I mean? It's about the explanation of the take. It's about the quality of the writing behind the review. Is this reviewer just reviewing the thing based on stuff that they wanted to happen and didn't happen? I could care less about that review. Is this reviewer, where is the heart of the criticism for this reviewer, for this review coming from? Where's the heart of the praise for this review coming from? Are they just saying this movie was good because it had a lot of stuff they recognize in it? Are they just saying this movie is bad because it didn't have enough Easter eggs? Like, what are they reviewing? Why are they reviewing? And what is the explanation behind the review? That's what I care about. You can't shortcut this, right? And I think this is a desire to shortcut this. You don't want to evaluate somebody's opinion by actually using critical thinking about that person's opinion and breaking down the reasoning behind it. So we want to just boil this down to what is their resume. When it comes to a valid opinion about sports, it's been proven in order to have one, you don't need to be a 10-year vet in whatever league that you're talking about. You just need to have watched the game and have an opinion that you can explain soundly. If you have those 3 things, you can have an opinion about anything that you want to talk about, right? If you're willing to do the work. This idea that like you have to be a super expert in the field. Like a lot of people in YouTube comment sections have criticisms about YouTubers without being YouTubers. Are their criticisms valid? Well, if they're well worded and they're well written, yeah, probably. Like it doesn't, you don't have to be a 10,000 subscriber or channel in order to have a valid criticism, right? And I think gatekeeping opinions like that is silly, because a lot of us working in this space didn't play in the NFL for 15 years. And a lot of us be talking a lot of shit about the dudes who've been playing in the league for 15 years. So nah. It's about the quality of the take, not necessarily who is giving the take. And I think that's important. And again, the reason why I don't really trust Pro Football Focus grades isn't because of the person giving the grade. I assume that person's extremely qualified giving the grade. It's the lack of explanation that the lack of context and explanation that grade comes with that makes me uncomfortable with going with it. That's it. But thank you guys for the comments. Y'all have a great day. Even have a better night. Peace.